Welcome to MarcusG.tv. Today's section is food fraud. Check out foodfraudtv.com. So, I get a lot of viewer tips of places that are mislabeling food now. People are leaving them on threads in some of my videos. And here was something that was brought to my attention. Wolfgang's Steakhouse. You're familiar with it, girls?
Yep. Yes.
We drove by it. We went to that champagne tasting a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Not associated with Wolfgang Puck. However, I have had Wolfgang Puck's partner at Spiegel come to our table, Jamie, remember, and apologize because I caught their typo on wild salmon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I caught their typo. No, I just called them out for taking advantage of customers is what they meant more to say. However, now to Wolfgang's. I'm very passionate about this food labeling stuff. As a chef years ago, I was taught that it's part of my ethics and morals to properly label food, and it's the law. There's laws in a lot of states, and there's big fines if you're not properly labeling food. So Wolfgang's Steakhouse. Wolfgang's Steakhouse has been around, I guess, for years. They have 7 locations, ladies.
7?
7. Waikiki, LA, Miami, and 4 in New York. Park Avenue, Tribeca, Midtown, and there's another location. So, Wolfgang...
Are they all the same? They're all the same menu and whatnot?
They're identically the same menus with maybe slight variations. But basically, you can go online, which I'm on their website right now. Let me turn their music off. Wolfgang Zwiner. Wolfgang Zwiner went from head waiter at Peter Luger Steakhouse in Brooklyn, New York, to head honcho of his own restaurants in New York, Beverly Hills. It's just amazing. This guy, older gentleman, he's built a restaurant empire here. And he has a very nice steakhouse. Peter went from Peter Luger to his own restaurant empire. So, very well done website, very well done menu, very well done, you know, the restaurant's nice restaurant. You'd think that a place like this would be on top of their menus and where things come from. When I went online, all 7 of 7 locations had wild salmon on their menu. It is December 11th. Wild salmon is out of season. So this seems odd. I started making phone calls. One location to another. I called all 7 locations. 6 out of 7 locations told me they had, here's some of the rundowns of what some of the locations told me. All right. Park Avenue location. They have wild Atlantic salmon. They have wild Atlantic salmon in Park Avenue location. Swore they have it. Miami has wild salmon. Here's the most interesting one, Jamie, and you heard this phone call. The LA location. They said, I spoke to the managers at every single one of these places. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't getting misinformation from a server. I wanted to make sure, and even I spoke to the chef at some of these locations. The manager in LA said, well, it's farmed, but they're farmed where you would catch wild salmon, so thus we can call it wild salmon. It's farmed where they catch wild salmon, so it's wild, in a sense. Really? These folks, you are paying these restaurant like this top dollar for something that they have no clue about. They're willing to tell you anything to charge you money and take your money and take advantage of you. I called every single location. The only location that knew what they were doing was Waikiki, was Hawaii. And I have a funny feeling that after I called the other 6 locations, because the time difference to Hawaii from New York, 6 hours later, 8 hours later, you know, I have a funny feeling that one of the other locations tipped them off. Maybe. The manager there was very, no, it's not in season, we don't have it. I said, but it's on your menu. He goes, our menu's not updated correctly. Now here's the good thing about LA. LA's current menu in the house, the general manager emailed it to me. In-house, they don't have it listed on their menu. Online, they do.
They have it grilled salmon.
However, his definition of, well, it's farmed, but it's being farmed where they catch wild salmon, so it's kind of wild. So, totally wrong. So, Wolfgang here, Jamie, I mean, this is just astonishing. I spoke to the chefs and the managers. They have no clue. They think because they hear that they see the word Atlantic, that it comes from the wild. That's one of the reasons I got. They also, because it comes from the ocean, it's wild. So let me give you a quick breakdown of how this works. The Pacific Ocean has 6 species of salmon. They have Chinook and King, which is the same, chum, silver, coho, sockeye. There's all these separate breeds. They basically primarily farm king salmon if they farm it, and it's farmed in British Columbia and it's farmed in New Zealand. On the Atlantic side of our ocean, there's one species. It's Atlantic salmon. That's it. So when you see the word Atlantic salmon, they're referring to the species of salmon, not to where it's from, because they can farm Atlantic salmon in Chile. They can farm Atlantic salmon anywhere, okay? So Atlantic salmon means that's the species. It has nothing to do with it being out in the wild, out in these beautiful pristine waters. That's not the case. Atlantic salmon is basically illegal to serve. There's very, very small catches now of wild salmon in Scotland, but nothing to write home about. And if it did get to the US, it would be like $30 a pound wholesale. There's no restaurants that are doing it. You might as well get wild king salmon or good wild salmon from Alaska or the Columbia River or from Canada on the Pacific side. So virtually no restaurants are going to have. They couldn't afford it. They wouldn't know how to get it. I'm not even sure if it's imported. I saw this 2 years ago at the Seafood Expo in Boston, and it was a very rare product. 90 metric tons being landed annually, which is nothing. That's nothing. It's not like it's going to affect our market. You're not going to see it on menus here. So if it says Atlantic, it means that it's Atlantic species, which means it's from a farm. And farms, believe it or not, are in oceans. So because people say, well, it's in the ocean, it's got to be wild. No, it's in a farm in the ocean. That's where you would farm.
What do they actually do to raise the fish?
Well, here's some of the issues with farm salmon, okay? A salmon farm can dump the amount of waste equivalent to a village or city with a population of 10,000 people. Which means the salmon is swimming in feces constantly. It's dropping to the bottom of the ocean floor. Imagine a village the city the size of 10,000 people a day. Imagine the municipal waste system. That's what we're talking about. Waste. It's dropping in, they're swimming in it. They cram these fish together. It's basically the feedlot. When they put cattle together, they pack them together so they don't move. They fatten them up. Same thing with salmon. It's a feedlot for salmon people. They're not out in pristine waters. It's a feedlot for salmon.
So they're caged in.
They're caged in. They're fed corn and soy, and then they take wild fish to harvest. But it takes more wild fish. So if they have 3 pounds of wild fish, they're only going to get 1 pound of salmon yield. So you're creating a food shortage. They claim, oh, we're saving wild salmon. Oh, we're saving food shortages. No, you're creating a food shortage. You're taking more resources from the wild to get less yield. We might as well just do something with the wild fish you're catching because it's better yield. 3 times the amount of yield. So the grains they're feeding it are most likely GMO. There are no really organic standards out there. There's no USDA organic standards for fish. When you see organic farm salmon, it's just somebody saying, well, we do it organically. The USDA is not in there, even though the USDA is not the best. There's no real organization. They're saying, well, you have real organic salmon. No, it's a self-regulated term for argument's sake. Just like cosmetics, it's self-regulated. Anybody can say that without a certification. What happens, these fish are also so close, and in these pens, they get sick. They get lice. Well, these diseases travel out into the wild, thus the wild salmon suffer. Because salmon is farmed in open pens, where the tops are totally open, out and get out and escape, which happens all the time. In certain cases, the nets break and hundreds of thousands of fish escape into the wild. You're thinking, well, that might be great because now we're replenishing wild salmon, right? Wrong. Farm salmon are genetically misfit. They're bred not to reproduce. It's like a watermelon without a seed. You can't buy a watermelon, open it up, and find a seed to go plant the watermelon. It doesn't work like that. Same thing with salmon. They don't reproduce. So now they're out there spreading their lice, spreading disease, competing for the same food sources that the fragile wild salmon need, and these salmon aren't never gonna reproduce. They're just wasting space out there and spreading disease. I would never personally eat farmed salmon. I would never personally serve farmed salmon. I just wouldn't do it. So, I hope some restaurants are watching this. I hope Wolfgang's is watching this, and they're using this as a training material. I tried to explain to all the managers in a very nice way, because this is an educational thing. but I just get so upset when restaurants take advantage. And when a major steakhouse like Wolfgang's of 7 locations, 6 out of 7, are blatantly taking advantage and don't even just like, yeah, of course we have wild Atlanta, of course we have, and they're so quick. And here's the part that really pisses me off. Most consumers don't know enough to say, no, you're lying to me. That's the part. Because consumers trust where they're going, and they should trust where they're going. They should have a good feeling. They shouldn't go out to eat and not trust anybody.
They also shouldn't be afraid to speak up.
But don't be afraid of a consumer to speak up and say, I want to see. I want to see where they, I want to see an invoice. I want proof that this is really wild. I want proof of this. I want to know. So don't be afraid to really step up and say, no, I only eat wild salmon, and I only eat grass-fed beef, or I don't eat soy, or this and that, and I need hard evidence right now. But you know, sometimes you need to do that ahead of time as a consumer. Call them ahead of time and call them ahead of time. I'm coming in for dinner. I want to make sure you have wild salmon. I see it on your menu. Somebody told me this and that, or do some research before you actually go out to eat. But you have every right to know. You have every right to question. You have every right to say, you know what? Please prove it to me. As a consumer, I want to gain your trust. Please prove to me. Tell me what you know about the product. Tell me as much as you can so I'm comfortable and I know. Anything else?
And wild is not a breed of salmon.
Wild, that's a whole, was that a Wolfgang call? The wild's not
I can't remember which
I have meticulous notes because we did a lot of research on this and found a ton of restaurants blatantly just saying.
Wild is not a breed.
One restaurant told us that they are allowed to use the term wild for farm salmon because wild is the name of the breed. We have farmed wild salmon, so that's the name of the breed, so thus they can put it on their menu and they have every right to. That's a whole nother video. Stay tuned for that one. I'm Chef Marcus Giuliano. If you like this video, hit like, subscribe to my channel, pass this video on. In the comment thread, leave a place that you want me to investigate.